Hi, I'm Beideman with Planting America, and right now we're going to talk about planting a tree. One of the first things you want to consider when planting a tree is when and what season to plant that tree during. Most trees, when planted in the fall, will outperform trees that are planted in the late winter or early spring. Summertime is actually a time that you don't want to plant due to the intense heat and lack of water, and during the summer most of the work done by a tree is through the leaves and not into the roots where you want it to be established. We're going to be planting this one in the spring, so that's okay as long as we maintain it properly afterwards. She should survive. Now, trees can come in multiple forms. Today we're going to be planting a container grown tree. You could also plant trees that have been balled and burlapped. You could plant trees that are bare root with no soil on the roots, and you can also plant from seeds. Okay, so now you see we have our hole dug. Like I mentioned before, it's about 2 times as wide as the diameter of our container. This is the soil that we took from the hole. Now, what you don't want to incorporate in your soil mix is any of the turf or weeds that happen to be growing in your yard at the time. What we did was we took the turf from the top, and when we pulled it up, we kind of shook the dirt off of it, and we have a really nice pile now of topsoil. One component of the hole that I'd like for you to take a look at is the walls of it. Now, in order for the roots to penetrate through the container that they start in, out into the soil mixture that we're going to put in, and through these walls, you're going to have some pretty vigorous roots. Now, like I mentioned, in a yard such as this, where this soil isn't too compact from construction and overuse, it won't be too big of a problem. But in areas where you have a soil component that's very compact, it's going to be difficult for your roots to penetrate through that. One thing you can do to kind of help that out is to score the sides of the hole. So we score the sides of the hole to give the roots a better opportunity to push through and to become really established in the landscape. Now, what we're going to do at this time is remove our plant from the container that it's been growing in, and we're going to rest it in our hole. Now, it's important that when you're doing this process, that you don't leave this outside of the container or outside of the burlap, in whichever instance that you're doing. It's important that you don't leave it outside of that in direct sunlight for too long. If the roots dry up, it could mean very, very difficult times for the tree's future. So we're going to take it out of the pot now. Now, one thing about container grown plants is that a lot of the times, as the roots inside the container work their way towards the edge, they begin to kind of swirl around with the container and bundle up. And this can cause many problems, such as root death, root girdling, and other problems that's going to make it difficult for your tree to successfully establish itself in the landscape. So, as I pull it out of the pot, I'm checking to see if any of the roots have done that, and sure enough, they have. See these here? They've begun to push towards the end, and then they have really nowhere to go. So they start to move down and around, and they intertwine, and this really makes it difficult for the tree to spread its roots outward instead of continuing it in that circular motion that they've begun to follow. Now, one of the most important parts of planting the tree is getting it at the right height, the right depth, as I mentioned before. What you're going to look for is where this trunk starts to taper. Now, it was planted pretty well in its container, and if we take a look here, you can see where it starts to taper outwards. That's the height at which we want it to sit on the ground level. If you've seen any well-established trees in a landscape or in a forest, you'll see that the better, more healthy trees have a good taper. Ones that are planted in the ground can often have problems such as trunk rot, girdling roots that you can't see, and other issues that can lead to tree fatality. Now, another thing to take into account is that this soil is very loose right now, and when we backfill it, over time with watering and gravity, it's going to settle. And as that happens, the root ball right here can sink a little bit. So we want to make sure that we don't let that happen by, backfilling it enough. Let's check it out. Use our measuring tool here. Yep, it looks like that's gonna be all right. Okay, so now we're gonna backfill our hole with the topsoil and the soil from the hole mixture. And one thing that I really want to stress to you at this time is that a lot of the future of your tree depends on its watering, irrigation. Now we have a bucket of water here for the planting. It's a good idea to get that root ball wet, nice and wet, before you start backfilling the hole. So here we go, putting some topsoil in, get a little bit of the original soil in there. Now, once your tree has been completely planted and established, one of the key components to keeping it alive throughout the growing season is the irrigation, as I mentioned. On average, as a rule of thumb, I would say probably about 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch of water a week. So that's probably water the tree once a week. One thing you don't want to do is let it get too dry, but you also don't want to keep it too wet, too saturated. A good method to use is something called a gator bag. The gator bag is basically, it's an irrigation system, and it's a bag that rests around the area around the hole that you created. You fill it with water, and it slowly but surely trickles water into the soil for about a couple-day process. It's been proven to be very effective, and also very low maintenance. You fill the bag up and you let it go. We're gonna give her one last drink of water. Really make sure that she doesn't dry out. Get those roots established quickly. We want to see her grow well, and I think that we're doing this properly, and I think that we will see that happen. Now, mulch. Mulch is a pretty critical part of any tree planting exercise. It's good in that it helps deter lawnmowers and weed whackers from coming up along the side of your tree. It kind of prevents people from running around and playing near it. It also makes it look good. Now, as a rule of thumb, mulch doesn't need, it's very, very easy to over mulch a tree. I see it time and time again, these huge volcanoes that lead down to this tree. That honestly doesn't need to happen. Over mulching can actually deter growth and actually cause some problems. I'd say as a rule of thumb about 2 to 3 inches, maybe about 3 to 4 depending, of mulch in a large enough circle, usually out to about the drip line. The drip line is where the leaves will extend to. Now, when staking a tree, it's important to remember several things. First, the most important part I would say is how the string or the rope that you're using is tied to the tree. I use a bowline knot, which is a good knot in that it creates a ring that won't cinch up onto the trunk. Now, this is important because if it's too tight against the cambium, against the trunk tissue, it's going to make it very, very difficult for water and nutrients to flow from the soil and the roots up into the leaves and into the crown. It's best to stake a tree for about 1 growing season or 1 year after planting. And the reason behind that is to allow it time for the roots to establish out into the surrounding soil so that it'll be sturdy enough to maintain itself on its own in storms and things. If you leave the hardware on there for too long, the tree bowl, the trunk here, can expand and take up all that space there, and you can really girdle the tree. So about 1 year, slower growing species, maybe 2 growing seasons, 2 years. And that's about it. Again, if you have any questions, you can shoot me a question at Ask Rob on Planet America's website. I'd be more than happy to get back to you about it at my earliest convenience. Thank you.